what I'm really talking about today is a little bit of what makes Houdini special and unique as a 3D application, in my opinion, at least. There's lots of 3D applications, and you may be going, "Do I really need to learn another one? I already know Blender or I already know Max." And what I'm going to be talking about today is how to leverage the programmatic nature of Houdini. So, what I'm really talking about is we can start adding some really simple scripting directly into the parameters of our Houdini objects. Now, I'm going to show you some very basic examples, but you can kind of imagine where you could take this if you wanted to go farther. So if anyone has any questions, feel free. You can ask in the chat. Mike should be watching the chat, and you can feel free to follow up with either of us at a later time through the Discord. There's the Game Collective Discord, or however. So feel free to let us know if you have questions. If you want to see more of this, I'm really having fun with Houdini, and so I'd love to share more. And I'm also learning it as well, so I'm just going to apologize in advance. I'm struggling a little bit with the Houdini lingo sometimes. That's why I brought Mike in as my ringer here to help back things up. But so I apologize in advance if I'm butchering the Houdini. Oh, I already just lost things. Never mind. If I Yeah. Okay. Okay. Apologies about that. We have some minor technical difficulties. Thank you, Discord, for updating your software minutes before our streaming event and then crashing minutes into it. So check your bugs, everybody, before you push to production. Okay, let's get on with this before anything else happens. So what I'm going to be doing today is just. Did you lose me again? Okay. Uh, yeah. I just closed Twitch. I'll see if that helps. Uh, sure. Okay. We're gonna try this one more time, and then we're gonna pass over to Mike if it still doesn't work. So hopefully this is working. Um, so what I'm going to be talking about today is how to sort of programmatically set your variables based on other variables. No, I think it's my whole computer here. We might be toast. Okay. Just close everything here.
Sure, let me share my screen.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, I'm gonna reset here.
All right. So, Dylan's having some technical issues. I'm going to take over and do the section that I was going to do. So we're just going to be doing a quick look at something a little more intermediate than what we had made our videos on. We're going to take a look at instancing. So I'll have to set some of this up kind of as we go. Let me just start up the Unity project real quick. do. All right, Unity. All right, so we got our space station asset from the first live stream that we did, and it should be in some of these videos that we released as well. But let's say we want to place some like asteroids around it. And I mean, normally you could just load in your asteroid mesh and then like manually copy it a whole bunch of times and have to move it around by hand and try and get some variation like that. But that takes a long time. That's a lot of work. So we can just make Houdini do that work for us. So first thing we need to do, I guess, is we're going to build a quick asteroid mesh. It's not going to be anything too crazy. It's going to drop down a sphere here. Let's see, we've got that. We're going to scatter some points. That is way too many points. I'm just going to use a scatter node here. We're going to make the total count something much lower, like say 15 is fine. And then we're going to do a copy to points. So we want the target points to copy to be the points that we just scattered here. And let's put a box down. So we can see we're copying a box to these points now. I'm not going to go too crazy in depth with this, like I said. I'm just going to make it maybe a little more interesting of a shape. And that can be our asteroid, a big blocky, squarish asteroid. So we're just going to Boolean union this together. And I'm going to send that to this FBX node here just to save it as an FBX. And let me just grab the... We're going to make a folder in our project and keep organized. Call it meshes. Then we're going to grab the path for that folder, which is here. Go back to Houdini real quick. And we're going to paste the path there. So now whenever we hit save on this node here, we're going to save our mesh right to our project, which is kind of handy. We're going to call it asteroid FBX. So we'll save to disk up here. And then that'll just save, everything that's being plugged into this node to an FBX as you'd expect. Go back to our Unity project. I saved it to the wrong folder. We'll just fix that real quick. Assets, meshes, asteroid. Save it again. Let's head back and delete this old one. And in our meshes folder, we've got our asteroid. So like I was saying, if you want to place some asteroids in our environment, what you could do is duplicate some like this, like this, and then maybe grab a couple at a time and duplicate them, move them around. But this is gonna take forever. So we're gonna make a Houdini tool that's gonna do this for us. So back to Houdini. We're gonna start out similar to what we just did to make the asteroid. I'm gonna make just a sphere here. This is gonna be kind of our spawn zone for these asteroids. So let's just set up our subnet real quick. Call it asteroid instancing. I'm gonna hop into there. All right, so we're gonna start with this sphere here. And we're gonna make it bigger, so our area that we're gonna be scattering these asteroids to is gonna be much bigger. I'm gonna set down a scatter node. This. Again, that is a lot of points, so we're just gonna do 50 points, we'll say. And let's put down a copy to points node. So I'm actually going to copy the asteroid network that we set up here and bring that in. We're going to be changing that later. So we'll plug that in there, and now you can see we're copying our asteroid to all these points here, which is great. But if we wanted a little bit more control over this, like say we already had our own asteroid, we didn't want to like have to procedurally generate it in Houdini. We just wanted to plug in an asset that we already had into our HDA. We can do that as well. So I've got a file node here. If we plug the file node into the copy to points node, you can see this is just like the default cube. If we pick our, that is not what I want to do, sorry. Let's go back to Unity and just get the path to our FBX here. So we'll right click, copy path. And then we'll go back here and we're going to paste that path into, that is the relative path. All right, we got to get the actual path here in Windows. So we'll go into our meshes folder. We'll just copy the path up here. Paste our path. And we'll paste our path here rather into the file browser. Then we can just grab the asteroid FBX. All right, so now we're scattering this asteroid FBX to our points. I'm just gonna make a null node at the end of my network here. This as our output. Call it output. And just to kind of get the ball rolling, we're gonna make this a digital asset. So I'm going to make sure I've got my subnetwork selected here, and I'm going to right-click, create digital asset. And generally, I like to save the digital assets directly into the project folder. So we're going to paste that path there again. I'm going to go to HDA, and we're just going to call it asteroid instancing HDA. Hit accept and hit accept. And now I've got our little like parameter window here. So we head over to our parameters. We're going to set up a couple little controls. We'll do the scale, let's say, of the area that we're scattering to, and we'll do the total count that we're scattering. I'm going to call this asteroid count, and let's say asteroid field. All right. So what we should be able to do is we're actually going to have to change this file node. Because while this will grab the FBX in Houdini, Houdini engine can take a object merge node. So when we have an object merge node in our network, Houdini engine can kind of pick that up and it'll give us, we just got to drag this number of objects. It's a little not super clear how to do this, but you can, if you have to drag on number of objects into the parameter window here, and it'll kind of grab the whole like section here, and you want to make sure you grab the whole section here. And we can change the name of this to, let's say, asteroid. We'll hit apply. You can see all these fields turn green, and that's good because what we want to do is plug in our like Unity asset here into the object1 field. This will be a lot more clear once we head over to Unity and throw the asset in there. So we're going to do that real quick. We're going to go to our HDA. We're just going to drag it into the scene. I probably should have saved the asset. Let's accept. And we're going to rebuild here. Okay. We need to be previewing our output node. It's a common mistake that I make. So when you're saving your digital asset, again, you want to be previewing the node that you want to be like your final node. So I'm going to preview this this null node down here, and I'll go back and resave our asset real quickly. And we'll go back to Unity. We're going to hit rebuild. That'll like re-import the HDA and recook it for us. And now you can see it's got this big like object merge interface here because we had set up this whole like section of parameters here on the object merge node as parameters in our HDA. So if we go into Unity, we can go to our meshes, and if we have this open, I should be able to add a slot here. And now you can see there's a slot specifically for a Unity game object, and we can just drag our asteroid in here. And they're quite small, but you can see that it has scattered our asteroids around for us. So the way we can fix it being way too small, we can hop back into Houdini. Really easy way to do this. Let's drop down a transform node here, and then in our asset properties, we can put the uniform scale here, and we'll call this asteroid scale. Hit accept. We're going to resave our assets, hop back to Houdini, and we're going to rebuild the asset. And now you can see we've got our asteroid scale slider here. We can just slide that up. You can see our asteroid's getting bigger. That's great. Let's put it to say 25. I've got a whole bunch of little asteroids here. We can make the field larger if we want. And this is all kind of updating automatically for us, which is really handy. If we want more asteroids, we can like slide this up. Oh, that's quite a lot of asteroids. You can go down to 10, you can go down to up to 80, and you don't have to like mess around and like place every single individual one, which is of course very, very nice. You don't have to manually do all of that work. So the only gotcha here is that if you click on this, you'll notice that let's bake this to a game object real quick, just so we're not messing with the actual tool. So we'll turn that off. So this is what it's baked out for us. You can see that's just one single mesh. So if you've like scattered all of these asteroids, and now you're like, oh well, I want to move just this one, or like just these 3 need to get out of the way or something. You can't really do that because it's just one. It's just baked out to one mesh. The way we can fix that is if we go back to Houdini really quick. In our copy to points node, we just want to turn on pack an instance. So what this is going to do is when you're copying things to points in Houdini with pack an instance enabled, we'll just save this really quick, and I can show you right in Unity what's changed. If we rebuild the asset here, you can see where this used to be one mesh. Now it's like it's got some child objects, and we've got all of these. They're named a little silly, Savio asteroid instancing, instance 1, instance 2, but you can see these are all now separate objects, so we can mess around with them however we'd like. And if we check out what was I gonna look at? Sorry. There we go. Yes. So if we check out the mesh filter that all of these have, you can see they're all using the same mesh filter. So that's a good. It's a more efficient way to render these things. So instead of Houdini saving, however many asteroids this is, like 58 different like individual meshes for all these asteroids, it's really just going to save one mesh and then set up all these objects and have all those objects reference that one mesh, which is a much more efficient way of copying objects around the scene. So I'll go back to the tool here. I'll bake it to a game object. I'll turn this off. Sorry, no, we want to bake this to a prefab. Bake that to a prefab. You can see now here in our like project hierarchy, it's got prefab here, and then in it'll make a baked folder for you. Let's go back real quick. I lost which folder this is. So box 2, no, was asteroid sensing 2. Yes, I believe that is it. So yes, we've got our prefab here. Drag that to the scene. We're going to disable the Houdini tool real quick. So we've got our prefab here of all of our asteroids, and you can see it'll make a meshes folder for you by default. And if we open that again, it's just this one asteroid mesh. Rather than having like in this folder like 58 different meshes, it's just got the one there, which is again a very efficient way of setting that up. So that's pretty much the gist of some basic instancing. You can set it up to, again, copy something that like you've built in your Houdini network. So if we wanted to, we could just plug in this asteroid that we've made here procedurally, and it'll just generate that for us. Or we can have this object merge node here, and as long as you make this entire like section of the node an editable parameter in Unity, then Houdini engine in Unity will recognize that and give us this interface here that we can like drop actual Unity assets into. And if I'm not mistaken, you should be able to place prefabs in here as well. Maybe I should just test that out really quick. Let's make prefab. We're just gonna make a cube with a point light. We're gonna make that a prefab. Call it a light cube. All right, this is where I actually end up being wrong. Okay, so we're gonna drag this prefab in here, and we have to fix the offset, and we're gonna edit that inside the prefab. So I'm going a little quick here. I just made the prefab like not at the origin, so it was copying it like way over to the side here. So if I just put it back to the origin and save it, then if I recook this, yes, they are very big though, so let's knock the scale back down to 1, and you can see it's copied all of these prefabs. So that's just a great way to use existing assets with Houdini rather than having to like try to build everything for your game in Houdini. It does have ways that you can like plug in your existing assets and maybe just like place them around. A good use of this is, rather than just scattering points on like a sphere here for an asteroid field, you could take a terrain as an input and scatter some points along the terrain, and then maybe the things that you're copying to those points are like trees or bushes or bunches of grass. It can be really powerful depending on how you use it. So that's a quick overview of instancing. And unless there are any questions, I'm gonna throw it over to Dylan. I don't think I see questions in chat.
Okay. Well, thanks, Mike. That was awesome. So a few good tricks you can use for reusing your existing assets and plugging in prefabs and getting some more performance. Everyone's always overly worried about optimization, so some good optimization tips.
Mm.
Sure. And I'm gonna give this another shot here. Sorry about the issues I was having earlier. I'm gonna try this one more time. Houdini's a bit of a resource hog, and streaming video is also a bit of a resource hog. So I think I'm just running out of RAM. But I also realized I was accidentally doing an erosion simulation in the background, so that also might be contributing to things. So okay, my screen's live. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna try this again. Sorry about the technical issues earlier. Um, So I'm going to show you how to model this beautiful rectangular box. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to show you how to start working with your parameters like a programmer. So those of you who know me, I'm a programmer and I have an interest in 3D art, but I'm coming at it kind of with a programming background. So uh, there's some really cool things you can do here, really sort of simple tools that can really allow you to do certain things very easily that you might otherwise have a hard time to do in Houdini. One of the problems I found with Houdini is that there's a little bit of an expectation that you're going to roll your sleeves up and write some code at some point, and there's like certain things that just don't have an easy way to do it with the nodes. So you might have to get your hands dirty here. So I'm gonna before I kind of talk about what I'm gonna do, I just want to talk a little bit about the transform node itself. So just because I'm going to be using it, and I'm not sure if people are, oops, uh, what your experience level is, but basically a transform node in Houdini is just a way of adding a offset or a rotation. So you can see here I have my box and I added a transform, and now I can translate it based on this using this translate. And so if I go back to my original box, it's in the same spot. I could rotate it. And a really cool trick is if you hold the middle mouse button, it gives you this really nice kind of like slider where you can choose how much it's sliding. Now notice nothing's happening. That's because I still have my box visually selected, even though I have my node controls selected. So this is another thing that might catch you up if you're not used to it, is I can select a node to have the controls visible, and I can select a different node to have the actual visibility on. So this is a transform, pretty simple. I can rotate, I can do all the things you might want to do with your object, shear, you can do all sorts of, a little more than I wanted to. So this gives you a little more control, if you just want to shear it a little bit or scale it or whatever. But what I'm going to be talking about today is actually how you can start to kind of program behavior into these parameters. So what I have here, for example, is a box that I've perfectly aligned with the ground. Now, this is actually a pretty cool little trick, and it's something that, if you were doing this, like, you can obviously like grab the object and grab the move tool and move it, and put it where you kind of want to put it, but that's not very procedural, and it's going to cause you problems down the line if you want to keep, for example, your orientation zeroed out, which is usually something you might want to do. So I'm just going to set this. Oops, the size isn't what I meant to do. So what you can actually do is use a little bit of code here, and you can see I have I don't know, it's really small, but it's like $ y max is what I have typed in here. And this is actually an attribute of the transform. So what this is saying is find the maximum y value of the box coming in, and I'm programmatically assigning it to my translation of my nodes. So you can see I kind of have it selected here. You can see where the original box is, and you can see where my transform is moving it to. So by assigning the box to be centered, oops, I think I broke it here now. Um, to assign the box to be centered, what's going on? And I broke it. Anyway, I'm assigning the box to be centered at the maximum Y point of its original position, which is now sort of weirdly moved. Mike, where did I move this? I know I moved it with this tool. Do I have to undo that? There we go. Yeah, so rather than moving it with just like a move tool, oh, there's my edit. I don't know what the heck this is doing now. Rather than moving it with the move tool, I can assign it that position using code. Although this looks a little funny. Not sure why this is not doing this. Okay. Looks like my whole plane is a little bit off. Anyway, though, here's my box. Here's the origin point. And what I'm going to do is just give it this piece of code. Now, one thing that I found a little bit confusing about this is like, how do you know what attributes are available? Well, there's a couple ways. One of them is if you type $, it's going to show you all of them. Now, Houdini likes its variables to be terse. It is of the school of thought that variables should be the fewest letters long that they possibly need to be. So it's a little bit hard to tell what they actually do sometimes. But if you actually just go to the transform node, for example, you'll find that it has, so if you click the little help thing, it's going to open up this little help window. And the transform node itself actually has, if you go to locals here, these are its local attributes, I guess. There's local values that you can access. So, for example, if you need to get the center point, you can type in $CEY, and that will give you the Y value center point. So this is really handy if you just need to like center something, if you need to find the maximum value. So this one has the bounding box of the input. There's Y min and or X, Y, and Z min and max. So it gives you like the maximum or minimum value. So this is like a really handy little thing you can use to just sort of align things to each other, or stick something down somewhere. I'm not sure what I did with this, so it's off kilter in the middle, but from where I wanted it. But anyway, see, I'll just reset it to the beginning here. Yeah, so this is kind of the basic position of a box. And then when I set the transform, it's now centering it to the maximum Y. And so this is actually going to have the effect of putting it like flat on the plane. Now there's a few ways you can do this. So another way would be to access the size of the box. So this is a different transform. It's putting the thing in the same place, but I'm doing it a completely different way. So the way to read this, I know it's a little bit tiny, but it says CH, so that means channel. So it's saying grab the channel. Now you get brackets. So those of you who've done some programming are going to recognize that we're talking about a method here, right? And then we are giving it a string. So this is like double quotes means this is a string, which just means like a series of letters. Um, and this is actually giving you the path. So if you've ever done any command line programming, you'll recognize this. Dot dot means take a step backwards from the folder you're in. So it means the same thing here. So what I'm really saying is I'm in this transform, take a step backwards so that I'm now in the context of all these nodes here, and then select box 1. So I'm literally selecting this node by name. So I could select box 2 or whatever, any other node at all. So this is a really easy way to just like access your other parameters, access your other nodes, and you can actually just get their value. And so I'm getting size Y. So I'm literally taking the size here, so 3.6, and then I'm going to just divide it by 2. So I'm both accessing a variable, and then I'm putting that variable in, and then I'm dividing it in half, and that's going to give me the perfect alignment of my translation node, even if I change the size of the box. So this is really kind of how you start thinking a little bit procedurally. And there's a whole bunch of these, so you can check it in the particular node for what is there. And there's a bunch of global ones. So for example, you can get the frame number. Um, there's all kinds of stuff there. So like for example, if I wanted to set the size to the frame, I can go $F. And now as I move this along, it's just assigning the frame number to my X size. Now, would you want to do this? I don't know, maybe not. But it gives you a bit more control over, like, if you need to position something very accurately, or you need some particular thing to happen like exactly on a particular frame, you can actually just access that as a part of a mathematical function. The other thing you may have noticed is I'm flipping here between actually like the value and the channel. So you can see it's in this kind of teal color. I think this is teal anyway. This kind of light green blue. And if I click on translate here, it's actually going to flip between the equation that I've put in here. This is like a math function, and the actual value. So if you need to like see, okay, 3.4 divided in 2 is 1.7. So this allows you to kind of switch between contexts here if you need to view it. So this may seem kind of simple if you've done this before, but if you haven't, like I found this a little bit confusing and kind of intimidating to get into. So hopefully this makes it a little bit more transparent and you can kind of feel a little more comfortable starting to mess around with this. Now I'm going to show you a few different versions of this. So here's another box, and I think this is kind of the same one. Yeah. So in this case, I'm using the bounding box. So there's actually a bunch of functions here I can use as well. So in this case, I'm using the bounding box function and I'm saying, hey, go up a step to the box 2 and get its bounding box. So get the bounding box of box 2 and then give me the dy max. So give me the uh, directional y maximum. So this is literally doing the exact same thing as I'm doing here. I'm just doing it using a different format. So instead of just grabbing it directly um, based on this transform node, I'm actually using the bounding box function and then I'm like specifying which value from that. And if you want to know where these all are, it's all in the Houdini documentation. You just kind of have to read about expressions a little bit. So I can post some links after about where to find those. But just don't be intimidated if you see this kind of stuff. This is just saying, hey, go to the box and grab it. And again, I'm just aligning this to the ground, which is something you'll commonly want to do. Now, here's another example. I'm just doing the same thing, but I'm doing this in all 3 dimensions in this case. So I'm basically saying, hey, center my box at the bottom corner. I'm saying X min, Y min, and Z min, right? So if I change this to Y max, it's going to now put the X axis. So the center point of my transformed box is going to be at the top of where this is. And you can see this is really powerful because like, even though I'm rotating this at weird angles, here, I'll move it over here somewhere. My transform is just following it. So it's taking it's a little hard to see kind of what's going on. But it's literally taking the high point of this box and it's saying set my other box to set its y value to be at that point. So this is a way you can start attaching your primitives to each other very quickly and very accurately without in a very procedural way without having to like have a bunch of nodes attached, and you can just like literally take the value of one and paste it to the other. Something else you might want to do is like, I don't know, if I wanted to have these two things just follow each other, for example. So I can just make a sphere here, and I want to just like say I want to just center this sphere so that it's perfectly aligned with this rectangle, right? Um, I can literally just take this translate value. There's a couple ways to do this, but I'm just going to literally copy the parameter. So I'm copying my translate parameter. And oh, why is this not going to show up here? What is this error doing? Polygon, maybe? Is that this problem? Yeah, it wants to be a polygon. And I'm just going to paste this, and I'm right clicking here on center and I'm going paste relative references. So there's a few options here. You can just paste the value. You can paste the channels. I don't really know what that one does, but what I want to do is paste the relative references. And you can see here, it actually goes and finds this channel for you. So you can actually just copy paste this stuff. You don't even have to type it out. So what's happening now is it's saying, go to the channel, which is one step back. So you got to think about it like from the perspective of this control, you're in this sphere node. So saying dot dot is like back up one view to here. If I wanted to go all the way back to the object level, I could just go dot dot slash dot dot and then grab a node like that. So you can actually traverse the entire work area using like basically command line folder operations, which is pretty cool. Um, so I'm getting the channel transform 3 t of x, which is the translate, I guess. And I'm getting the y and I'm getting the z. And now this sphere is going to be, other than throwing an error here, which I'm still not entirely sure what is. Bad data. Oh, I broke it somehow. I think this will work. Let's try this again. Copy parameter. It was working for a second there. Let's just paste it again. No. Transform 2 of x, 2y. I don't know.
I think it may not like that you're
Oh, the
telling it to look at the
translation.
you're telling it to look at like the $x min.
Oh, that might be the issue, hey? Okay, well, let's clear this out. So something else you gotta want to do is get rid of these, which is sometimes a little problematic. What is it? It's control left click, isn't it? I seem to be having issues with
It's,
these. You know what it is? I've hooked this up to a UI, I think. It's something like that.
I think it's control shift left
Is that it?
click.
Control shift. They always make these things a little tricky. There we goes. Yeah. So control shift left click. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm gonna just and oh there yeah, there we go. Okay, Mike to the rescue. Thanks, Mike. Um okay, so I'm gonna copy this parameter. I'm gonna paste this is why you rehearse this stuff. I'm gonna paste the relative references here. So that's working now. There we go. Yeah, you're right. So now I've attached this sphere to my cube. And if I move my cube, this sphere is perfectly aligned with it. So like something as simple as just aligning two objects. This is like a really easy way you can do it. You should be able to chain these together a little bit more. I think it might be because this was involved with a UI as well. I don't know. But anyway, that's just an example of something you can do with it. So you can do all sorts of stuff. You can align things. Here's kind of a funny one. I think if this is the one I'm thinking of. Yeah. So what I've got here is I've attached. So I'm only working on this transform now. I'm not working on the box at all. And what I've done here, if you don't have to change nodes, you can just write ch. So I'm getting the channel, or you can just copy paste it. This is what I'm doing. I'm just going copy parameter, paste, paste relative reference, and you see it gives you this channel RY. So this is the rotation Y. So this is kind of a funny thing. I'm going to divide it by 100 because otherwise it's too fast. But what I can actually do here is I've attached the translation to the rotation. So as I rotate it, you see it actually is going to, let's see here. There we go. So as I rotate it, it's actually going to translate it perfectly with it. So this is like not even a node operation. This is just literally like one copy and paste. And I've now wired these two together. So if you needed to have an animation of a screw or something, I don't know, you can start linking your parameters to each other and having like one variable drive several operations all in synchrony. So it's a very cool effect. And you can see again, I'm just doing like a little math function here. So I'm just dividing it by 100. If I feel like that's not moving it fast enough, I can let's put it back to 0. I could divide it by 10 and you can see it moves super fast. Or if I divide it by 1,000, I'm just picking these numbers at sort of random. There's no there we go. Now it's spinning super fast. So you can actually control this quite a bit just using these like really simple math functions. Um, and I think this is basically the same thing. I'm just demonstrating the reference again here. And yeah, and this is again, I'm showing you the frame. So there's a few global ones. There's a time. There's a frame. I think FF is like a frame, but it's a decimal. But the frame is kind of a cool one. So if you wanted to like, I'm moving this based on what frame it is, for example. You can do all sorts of stuff like that. Okay, that's kind of the basic one. So that's kind of how you attach these parameters together. Now you can get really in depth with this. This is just kind of the tip of the iceberg, but I found it a little bit intimidating. So I thought I would kind of help people get started with it. So another one I'm going to show you now is I'm going to look at doing some copying. So I have a box and I want to have many of these boxes. I'm just going to shut that off real quick. Okay, so I have a box and I want to make many boxes. So what I can do is actually just use the copy node, which you may or may not be familiar with. I don't know. Oops, sorry. There we go. I want to use the copy node. So I'll just show you the copy node as is, first of all, just in case you're not familiar with it. So what the copy node is going to do is it's going to make a certain number of copies, as you can see here, Now I've changed the scale. I'll set the scale back. It's a little more obvious what's happening. So I'm making copies of my object and I'm translating each of those copies by my translate value. Now you can do all sorts of stuff. You can rotate each one. So if I wanted this to turn 30 degrees each time, I can rotate, or I can rotate this way. Oops, it's a little hard to see what's going on with both of them, but you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this. It's a pretty cool node. Um, but you can start linking these together. So if I wanted to say I was like, uh, also, another way to do it too. So there's the copy node, and then there's also copy to points. So with copy to points, you give it a series of points. So here I have a line, and that line is going to have a bunch of points on it, and I can change how many points are on this line. Oh, I'm giving away the punchline here. I can change how many points are on this line by just adjusting uh, the number of points. But what I've actually done here is fixed it already. I was going to show you the process, but the problem I was having was that as I changed the length and the number of points, my cubes were kind of separated, and I wanted them to be sort of aligned with each other, so they were like top to bottom. Um, and I realized that I was having some weird problems. So it was okay if I had, see if I can remember how to do this now. Um, so if I had like a fixed number and the box is like size 1, okay, so my box is 1. I'm going to offset, uh, you know, this is not going to work. This is going to have some gaps. So what I actually realized is like what I needed to have, because what's happening here is the box is getting attached to the top point. So you can see that. And the box at the bottom is actually going over the line. So I actually needed to have more points than the length. So I had to go 6 points, and now this is sort of aligned. So this is what I was sort of trying to build. Um, the problem is that as soon as I start changing this length, this all breaks, basically, right? So as soon as I do this, it's not really that good anymore. It's kind of causing me some problems. So what you could actually do is use some of those like little expressions that I was doing to set the size of the cube, or to fix. So what I had done is realize that, hey, if I make the points one more than the length, then they're always going to be aligned with each other. So I did a little thing where I copied the parameter and I just pasted this. I'm going to paste the relative reference here, and I added 1. So there we go. So now anytime I change the length, right, it's going to realign this. Now you can kind of see that it's still causing me a bit of a problem, because if I go to some number like, you know, 6.5, it can't add 1 to that cleanly, so the copy isn't really working. So something else you can do here that's very related to this, but maybe a little bit of a different topic, is if I wanted to, I can actually go in here and create a control for it. So that's what I've done here. Is I just put it on this null node here. Um, Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Why is this not showing up? There we go. Um, so if I want to like anchor this a little bit better, what I could actually do is just add a control. So I'm going to go on this line, and I'm going to click on this little gear, and I'm going to say edit parameter interface. So I'm actually just going to edit this interface. Now, I don't really want to edit. I don't know if it's going to even let me do this. I did it on a different node last time, so we'll see. Okay, so I set this parameter. So I was doing this last time with the Unity. What I've done is basically just create a control for that parameter. So I'm going to put a folder in here. I'll put my length in the folder just so it's a little bit organized. I'm going to call this custom stuff. There we go. So I have my custom, and I'm going to call this, int length. This is what I want to do. I want to make a length that can only be an integer instead of a float. So now I've made my, oops, this should actually be int length. So this will be int length. There we go. So I can put this in, and you can see now I have this extra control that is now driving this length. Now, this is not working correctly yet because it can still be a floating point value. But all I have to do here is I can select this and I can just change the type to int. Boom. And now this is going to be only an integer. So even though this length could be some other value, now that there's a control on it, it's going to force it to be an int. So this is again really powerful, and you can export all this stuff to Unity or Unreal or whatever. So it's really powerful. Another thing that I was having some problems with is like it seems to be okay now, but if I say I wanted to set like a maximum or minimum range, you can also specify that. So if I'm going to go back into my parameter interface, I'm going to select this. Now I can set the default one. I can even set units, and there's all sorts of stuff here. But I can set like a range. So say I only want it to go between 3 and 9 for some reason. Uh, Now this control only goes from 3 to 9. So when you're starting to do this procedural stuff and you're finding like, oh, the complexity is just getting out of control, or I'm giving this to my designers, but they keep managing to break it anyway, one thing you could do is actually start building these custom controls that limit what it allows you to actually do. And that's going to help you keep things within a range that is viable for what you want. Now, in this case, I did it a little differently. I created a null node, and then I added the parameter to that. I'll just show you the process of doing it because there's a little bit of a glitch here. This can be kind of a nice way if you want to put all your controls. Like I just want to call this controls and put all my controls here. Um, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to make a length here, but I get this problem while creating some requested parameters. Node is outside subnet. So it doesn't like the fact that this line is not really in the same subnet as this control node. Like, I don't know. It's being a little fussy about it. Now, this took me like an hour to figure out, and I'm going to give it to you in 10 seconds here. So feel like it's a bargain. But if you just click here and click forbid linking parameters from outside this subnet, boom, now I can do whatever I want. So now it'll let me build that. So if you wanted to build like and now I can have my little null node and I have my length on it and it's all gravy. So it doesn't even have to be down here really. I don't think it actually even has to be like in the loop. So if you wanted to build like standalone nodes, I found it sometimes easier rather than like adding to my line or something, for example, like rather than adding to the line here, if I wanted to make like a standalone node that just had controls, that's how you do it. And I could set all the other stuff there as well. Now, this is really powerful stuff. You can do a lot with this. If we go into this interface, these are all the types of things you can set. So I'm using what am I using here right now? I'm just using an integer, but if I wanted to like say put a vector, or I wanted to put a min max float range or a logarithmic thing, there's all kinds of like way more controls than I can get into today. Color ramps and RGB masks and file with directory. So there's all kinds of these, and if you want to just set them, you basically just link the channel in here, and you do that the same way that we were doing it earlier. So I'm literally just saying, hey, go up, go to the line 2 node. This was not clear to me when I first looked at it. So hopefully this helps. So if you go into any of these, you'll see, so this one had 3, so it has 3 slots. And you just literally can like type in the channel you want and it will go. So this means like go from null up a view. So I'm in now the basic copying folder, basically. If you imagine each of these is a folder, like a folder in Windows, this is the same command. So it means go up one folder. So go up to this view and then go to line 2 and then get its distance, which is its length, which is a little confusing. Get its distance, and you can see here that it's like now we have it, so we can control it like that. And again, if you see it green like this, it's going to kind of stop you from messing with it, unless you click Control Shift left click, and then you can delete it like that. If you don't want to delete it, you just want to like show what the value is, you can just click on here again as well. So and yeah, so I just got a couple more things here I'm going to show you quick. So let's see. So this is a real kind of cool one. Just an example of something that would probably be pretty hard for you to model maybe on your own, or a way to maybe model something procedurally that is not obvious. So I'm going to make an airplane propeller here. And what I did is I just made a box and I gave it like a slight 10-degree rotation. So it's just a little bit offset. And then I'm copying it. Now, this is a great little trick here. I'm copying it, but I'm copying the what am I copying here? I'm copying the number. So I can see that I'm looking at this node because it just says channel. It doesn't say like dot dot or anything. So what I'm actually doing is getting the total number that this copy node is creating. And then I'm just taking 360 and I'm dividing it by that. So this is the degrees it's rotating it. So if I have 0, it does 0. If I have 1, it does a 360-degree rotation. If I have 2, it rotates them each 180 degrees. If I have 3, it rotates them 120 degrees. If I have 4, it rotates them 90 degrees. And instead of having to do all this math and like even instead of even having to make the decision of how many propellers this thing has, you can just wire this up and your designer can decide that, you know what, 15 is the right number of propellers for this, or the right number of props for this propeller if they want. And you can change it. Like you can just, now I have only one propeller, and you can see how combining something like this with some of those instancing tricks that Mike was talking about, suddenly if I have 10 different airplanes, they could literally all be using the same propeller. They don't You don't need to make 15 different propellers that one has 3 and one has 4 and one has 5. You can just use the same one, and you can expose this total number as a as a you know as a control. Like I can go on my node and there's my total number, and there we go. And you can expose that in Unity, and they can play around with that all they want. They can change the, I don't know what that's for, that's for something else, but they could go and expose this control, and then they can know that they can play around with these settings. And like for me, I always love in games, my favorite part is always kind of just like dropping the model in Unity and then just like adjusting it to make it fit. But this really gives you another level of that, where you can set up things to change at runtime and be able to really control it in a fine grained way. I think that's mostly it. Um, I think that's more or less what I wanted to show you today. I was just going to show one other quick thing here. I didn't really add too much to this ship. I will in the future, maybe, if people are interested. But I wanted to try to figure out how to add this. Like, I was trying to add this like cockpit kind of view. And I know it doesn't really look like a cockpit. You have to use your imagination. But I wanted to kind of give it this kind of detailing, and I was really kind of trying to figure out like how can I control how many little cockpit beds I had or whatever. And I realized it was actually a really simple answer. I just had to change my extrude subdivisions here. So what I'm doing, again, remember from last time, I'm selecting this face, I'm extruding this base. And originally what I had was I just had one division. And then I'm doing a group selection. So I'm grabbing only the sides, and then I'm grabbing uh what am I doing here? Oh, something's broken. Bad pattern selected. I don't know. Anyway, I was just grabbing the sides, and then I was grabbing it by normals here. So I'm saying take the Y normal, which would be the up direction, and grab everything within 70 degrees of that. So even if I subdivided these sides a bit, it would still grab that range. Then I'm going to extrude it. Now I'm using extrude in two different ways here. The first time I'm using connected components. So it's actually extruding this as one piece. And then I'm just going extrude. Oops. So let's just divide this a little bit. There we go. And then the second time, I'm dividing into individual elements. So one of the things I think that's really cool here is you don't have to make a node for this or anything. A lot of these kind of details are already built into your model. You can just start exposing them. So what I do here is I just take my divisions, which is just like a setting of poly extrude, and I just pretend it's a control, and I add it, and I can just like, if I wanted to add it to a node and call it, number of windshields or something. Now I could give that to a designer and they could go crazy, like adding as many of these as they want. And it's just really easy to kind of see these variations. It's like, oh, here's a cool kind of look. Maybe this will put you off in a new direction design wise. So, and it's really flexible, right? Because it's like it's all non-destructive. So if I change my mind, I can get rid of it later. Um, so I think that's all I wanted to talk about today. I just wanted to kind of introduce the idea of using parameters. I'll just kind of recap, like just the ability to like use these parameters and to just paste the values into each other. Like if I want to take, I can even just link them. Like say I want this to always, my X and my Z to always be linked. I can just paste my relative reference, and now as I move my box in one dimension, it's going to move it also in another. So it's really handy for these quick little, I don't know what this edit is, sorry. It's really handy for these quick little tricks, or quick little, there it goes. Now it's moving 45 degrees diagonally. And again, you can do little math operations. So say I want this to be at a 30-degree angle. I could divide that, and now when I was moving it, it would move. Oh, I'm moving it too fast. But you can see now it's at a different angle. So just using a little bit of simple math and a little bit of like thinking about where your values are coming from, you can really add a lot of flexibility and a lot of control to your models. Now, this is kind of the thing that Houdini is going to force you to do a little bit. If you're only working with nodes right now, you're going to find at a certain point that there's things that are really easy to do using these parameters, and they're basically impossible to do without them. So you're kind of going to get pushed into it at some point. But I really found that it was not obvious how some of those worked. So hopefully this will get people up and going and get you a little bit more comfortable to experiment. And again, if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out and let us know. And I'd love to do more of these in the future. So thanks. That's all I got to say. Oh, and Mike's got an amendment, so stay tuned for that. But thanks for tuning in. Take it away, Mike.
All right, I'm live. All right. So just a little quick correction to my one of my instancing details on instancing prefabs. Um, let's just go. I've already deleted. Okay. So when we had copied the prefab that we had made here, this light cube, if you open it up, you see the cube has a collider and there's a point light in here. When we had done that initially and instanced that, we actually only instanced the mesh. So if we go back to our network in Houdini, you can see this object merge node here. When you pipe in Unity objects with this, it's only going to grab the mesh of those objects. So when we would copy that cube, it didn't have any colliders and it didn't have any point lights on it. So there's another way to instance stuff. So I'll just drag my output node over here and hook it up to these two attribute create nodes. So another way that you can instance things is using just attributes on the points. You don't even have to use a copy to points node. So the first attribute we want to add is it's a point attribute because we're putting it on this little cloud of points here, and we want to make the type a string. And then the name of it has to be Unity underscore instance. You have to name it this way because like Houdini Engine Unity is going to look for an attribute called Unity underscore instance. And then another one that's handy is instance underscore prefix. This is going to like kind of clean up the naming a little bit once it's generated in Unity. Right here, I've just kind of got a default value set of just asteroid because we're scattering some asteroids. So if I go into my HDA's properties here, we can actually get rid of this because this is from our object merge node. We're not using that anymore, so I'm just going to delete these parameters here. So now you can just see we've got a, I should set this back. By default, this is going to be set to a string type here. This is our Unity instance. So what we want to do is set the type to operator path. And that's basically going to point to, normally an operator path is going to point to any like Houdini node that you want to put in here. And the reason we're setting this to an operator path is because that's going to give us the same kind of like UI that we had with the object merge node here. It's going to give us the similar like, you know, enable merge, object group, stuff like that. It's going to give us this kind of control. But just because of the way Houdini Engine Unity is set up, if we instance prefabs this way, it's going to like preserve all of the stuff that you want to preserve about your prefabs. So we just take this string here. We're going to make, I've already made this parameter, and then again, you set it to operator path. You can name it whatever you'd like. I'm just going to call it prefab. And then I've done the same thing with the prefix instance here. I've kept it as a string. You want to keep that as a string. It doesn't need to be an operator or anything like that, because this is just going to be the name of our copied asteroids, and I just labeled it prefix. Another little note is if you go into channels over here, generally you can see like these will normally be blank when you make an attribute, but you can enter like a default value. So I've just kind of entered like asteroid here. So when we throw this into Houdini, it should by default have like asteroid entered in that little UI element. So we're gonna hit accept. I'm gonna go to save. I'm gonna save that. So I'm gonna go back to Unity here, and we'll go to our HTA folder and I'm gonna throw this asteroid instancer back in here. So you can see we've got our prefab UI element. All we need to do is add a slot, and you can see we've got this whole other like instance inputs interface that popped up here. This is not super intuitive, but what you need to do is drag your prefab into the like bottom here. So we just drag it into instance game object here, and now you can see it's instanced our prefab. And since we've done it properly this time, if we expand this here, expand that. First off, you can see they're all just called asteroid underscore instance one because that's what we've got here in our prefix. If I change this to space rock, you can see they'll all update to space rock instance one, instance two, etc. So it's a nice little organizational tip. Let's put this back to asteroid. But now that we've done this correctly, with this interface here, you can see it's preserved our like prefab connections. So these all have a point light on them, and these all have like a collider on them. And then again, it's preserved the prefab connections. So if I grab my prefab down here, like I don't even need to adjust this stuff with Houdini Engine anymore. I can just like, let's update the scale. So I can just update the scale. And again, this is just like in the Unity prefab settings. I can just update the scale of the prefab, and since they're all prefabs, they'll all update. So I can say maybe I don't want colliders on all these boxes, so I can just remove the collider from the prefab, and now all of these boxes, you know, as Unity prefabs work, none of these boxes will have colliders on them anymore. So yeah, important to note that you need to do it that way. I tend to like doing it that way for like existing prefabs that I have, because you can include like Unity specific things like point lights and colliders and stuff like that, and that gives you a lot more power. So you know, if you're going to place like street lights or something, you'd want those street lights to have point lights or spotlights attached to them or whatever you're going to do in your game, right? Rather than just like the mesh, because then you're going to have to go and put all those lights in anyways, and that's a whole lot of work. And yeah, that's about it. That was just instancing with this is like the other way of instancing is using point attributes here rather than the object merge. It's not like wrong to use the object merge node, it just only grabs the mesh. And I neglected to mention that because I was doing it live. That's about it.